never let you go, and you make me feel.
Hey guys, welcome to J Renders. Today we'll be learning React in 15 minutes. However, the disclaimer is that we won't learn React fully in 15 minutes, as even expert coders take hours, maybe not even days, to understand and fully grasp React concepts. So instead, I just want to set a foundation for you guys, a foundation that will help you create beautiful front-end applications and basically inspire you to learn on your own. So without wasting any time, let's jump into the video. Alright, let's get started on creating our first React application. All I want you to do is open up a VS Code or any sort of editor that you want and just have a basic setup of React. Now, if you do not know how to set up React from scratch or using Vite, then I would recommend you to search it up online, or I will create a YouTube video or a short explaining the process of setting it up and configuring it with Tailwind CSS. So I've configured it with Tailwind CSS, so that's just for the ease of development, and I can just write CSS on each element. So that's just the reason for that. Now, first, when you open up your React application, I want you to delete every single thing that you see inside the app.jsx and just leave this part, just a normal skeleton. Okay, once you have that bit, we are good to go. From there, we will start our coding journey. Okay, so now what we will do here is we will look at a file structure. What does a file structure look like? Here we see lots of .jsx, and things like that. Why is .jsx being used here? And what is that? JSX is a templating language, right? That enables you to use HTML inside JavaScript. So you see that this is all JavaScript code. You can see that this import looks like JavaScript. This is a JavaScript function. Sorry, this. Now then, why is this part? How did that happen? Why is HTML inside JavaScript? Well, that is what JSX is. It enables you to use HTML inside JavaScript. Okay, so all I'm going to write is hello world here, and you will see that hello world is shown when I run the front-end server. So I'm just going to close it for now, and then npm run dev to start your development server. Boom, and then I will just go to my browser, and then, as you can see, hello world. Beautiful. All right, so that is what JSX is. Okay, now let's talk about components in React. What are components in React? I'm going to go to a website, and this is a website, tailwind.css. Beautiful UI, very clean, right? Now you see lots of different things inside this website. First thing you see is the navbar, the sidebar, and the content space. Okay, the content area. Now, these are what are components. Components are nothing but reusable pieces of code, right? Anything that is reusable and is a part of UI, that's a component. So here, navbar is a component, the sidebar is a component. And why is that such a good thing? The good thing about that is that whenever you want to use that piece of UI code in another project or in anything like that, you can just import that, right? You can just change the name. Instead of Tailwind CSS, you can have something else. Instead of this logo, you can have maybe a sun logo, right? And change the links. There you go. That's why React is so powerful. The reusability of React is what makes it such a beautiful JavaScript library. Okay, now let's go back to our code, and we will create a first component. Okay, first custom component. So all I want you to do is go to the source folder, create the folder, and you'll be creating a components folder. Inside that component, create two components, button.jsx and card.jsx. I'm going to go into the button.jsx, and before we even start this, go to your extensions and search up just React and download this ES7 React native snippets. Right, once you download this, go back to your button component and just write RFACE. Hit enter. Hit enter, and it goes something like this. Wow, it just created a component for you. And what does that stand for? Well, it's a React arrow function component. Why is that called that? Well, you can see that this is an arrow function. This is an arrow function, and you're returning a HTML UI code. So a arrow function component, right? Pretty simple. Now, here is where we will style a button. Okay, so we're going to be creating a button first. So I won't go too much depth into the CSS. I'll try explaining a bit, and from there we will go about that, since this is not a CSS tutorial, right? So I'm going to give it a background of blue and some padding. Let's call it with fit, so it just fits in that sort of text, whatever the text is. And I will give it some roundedness, and I'll call it medium. Okay, now let's go back to our browser, where the server is running, and see if that worked. Nope. For some reason, I cannot see my button here. Why is that the case? The case is, by default, React renders the main component, which is the app component, right? That's the parent component of everything. In order for me to render button, I will need to render the button inside this component. How do I do this? Well, if you're exporting it, doesn't it make sense to think that there will be some way to import it into some other file? Yeah, there is, right? All you got to do, right, import button, and there you go. This is the path, the relative path of the button component you have. And here, I'm just gonna have a button component. Boom. Now you will see our button component rendered into our screen. There you go. Beautiful. Just give it a little bit of margin so we can properly see the button. Spaces around it, right there. And what we are aiming to do is create sort of a like button, and we will be creating a card, and inside this we'll have a like button. So it's simulating sort of Instagram post, I guess. So let's just write like inside. Okay, we'll be using that button component inside the bigger card component. See how it all sort of adds up, right? Okay, now one thing is, this button component is a little bit static, right? So when I do anything, it doesn't really do much. How we're going to change that though? How? Well, event-driven architecture. So when some event happens, we want to do something. That's what event-driven is, right? So what we'll do is that once we click on this, we want to do something. There are multiple events. On mouse up, on mouse down, on hover, right? One of those events is on click. So right on click, and in this bracket is where you can insert your JavaScript function. This is the function that will run. This is the function, when I click on it, that will execute. Okay. For readability, I'm just going to write it here. I can write the function inside this directly, just won't be readable. So I'm going to write function print. Okay. All I wanted to do is on the console print I am getting printed. Right. Now inside here, just pass in the reference of the function, right? Do not call it, because if you call it, what will happen is, let me go inspect console, it already gets printed, right? And no matter how many times I click on it, it's not getting, the text won't get printed. The reason for that is you're telling this function to execute right now with that parentheses. We don't want it to execute as of now. We want it to tell the click event that whenever there is a click, go to that print function and call it. And here is a reference to that print function, right? That's the difference between referencing that function and calling that function. Very, very important. Okay, so now that we look at it, we see I'm getting printed multiple times. Beautiful. Okay, just saving that. And now, that's not exactly the functionality that we wanted though. The functionality that we wanted really was when you click on it, it turns from like to unlike, unlike to like. Okay, So for now, I will introduce you to something called hooks. Now, what is a hook? Hook is anything that starts with the word use. If you have use in front of it, it's called a hook. Okay, that's the sort of the simplest definition. There are multiple hooks, and each have a different sort of idea or different logic right? So in different scenarios, you will be using different hooks. Okay, so the first hook, and maybe the only hook that we will learn in this video for beginners, is useState. So I'm just going to write some code. I'll explain to you what this code means in a second. Alright, I just wrote this piece of code. I said const, and then this array notation. Inside this array notation, I have two elements. I have the text variable and the setText function. Now listen to this very carefully. This is a variable, this is a function. Okay, two different things. Now whatever I pass in here, I pass in a string called text, correct? This is the string that the text variable, the value of the text variable is, right? What React does is whenever this string changes, whenever the value of the text variable changes, it re-renders the component. Okay, right? So we can set it right now, but there must be a way to change it in the future. Perfect. That's where the setText function comes into play. SetText function enables us to change the value of text variable. Okay, so let's create a function that sort of mimics this. So I'm going to delete this function, and I'm going to just call it change value, like this. All I wanted to do is set text to be, instead of text, set it to be change text, right? Okay, now every time I click on that button, I want to run this code. I want to change this. So that's why instead of a print, I'm going to go to change value. I'm going to give that reference of change value because we changed that function, right? Change the name of that function. So every time we click on it, it'll run this function. Inside this function, we're changing the text value. Text value meaning the text variable value, this one. Okay. Now let's go to our main thing and reload. There'll be an error. Error is useState is not defined. Always, whenever you have importing some hook, you have to, whenever you're using some hook, you have to import it. Quickly import it. Import useState from React. Now, boom. Now you have that component rendering. But nothing as of now would happen when I click on it. Why is that? The reason is the text for that button is like, and it's static, right? It's not changing. No, it's not a variable, right? It can't change. It's sort of a literal text. So how do I change it? Instead of like, I want whatever the text variable is to render. Okay, and that's a JavaScript variable, right? JavaScript variable, not HTML. HTML doesn't have anything like variables. It's a JavaScript variable. So we want to use JavaScript here. To use JavaScript inside this, or JavaScript variables inside this, just do braces. And in this braces, you can add the variable that you want. So text. Boom. Now let's see. Reload. Once I click on it, change text. Nice. So reload, click on it, change text. We want it to be a like unlike button. So if I change this to be, oh, not a link, sorry, like, what will happen? Reload it, like, press it, change text. We want this to be unlike. Right, so go again, like, unlike. But when I click unlike, it doesn't change back to like. So it doesn't go back, it only does it once. How do I make it go back? Okay, to make it go back, this is where how useful React actually comes in to play. The set text, it actually takes in a function, right? I can give it a function, and once I give it a function, React automatically injects the previous value as a parameter in this function, right? So I can use that previous value. So what did I just do here? Kind of confusing me. Okay, let me repeat it. So I just create a function, simple function. Once I create a function, React automatically inside that function will inject the previous value, so as a parameter. So I can use that previous value in order to change the thing, in order to do some conditional checks or change the value. In our case, we want to check if priv is equal to like. We want to return, always we have to return out of that function when we're setting it in the set text, the setter function. We want to return unlike. If that's not the case, well, then we just want to return like. Simple as that. Correct. Now let's see if this works. I'm just going to reload it. Like, click on it, unlike, very nice. Like, beautiful. It is going back and forth. Right. That is amazing. So what did we do? We passed in a function inside that set text, right? Function inside a function. Whenever you pass that function, React automatically injects the previous word, previous value of the text, which was, if it's like, then we want to change it to unlike, else like. Pretty simple. Now we'll move on to a second component, which is the card component. Okay, so again, now you should get sort of the hang of it. RFACE, create a functional component. Gonna add some stylistic elements here, so just call it BG amber for now. Max width, I'll call it small. Give it some shadow, let's say 2xs or just medium, and I will give it some border of 2, border white. Okay, and yeah, so if we go back, nothing will happen. Why did nothing happen? Because we didn't import this into the here, right? So we don't want the button element right now. We want to import the card. All right, beautiful. Import the card. We see it's rendering, right? It's doing something. Instead of amber, we'll just have white, right? BG white, right? And here we will have an image. So I will just find an image and we'll be back. All right, so I found an image and just added some class name of it being cover, object cover. If you want to know more about CSS, what all these properties are, I will make a new video on that. But for now, we just found an object cover. Sorry, we found an image and we gave it a class name of object cover. All right, now I'm just gonna write h1. That's the title of the text. H or maybe a p tag, which is the insert text for the card. Okay, something like this. And now we want to use a button here, right? How do I use a button? Remember, import it first. We want to import it. Button, and then just use button. Oh, close it. There you go. Perfect. I'm just going to give some padding to this as well, padding of 2 to both of them. Now, we're not focusing too much on CSS, right? This is a very, very basic card component that I've created. Nothing too fancy, very, very basic. Just, I want to show you that with React, how beautiful things you can create, right? And that's why I wanted to use a real world example rather than just me printing text and showing you, oh, you can change the text and things like that. Okay. All right. Now here, inside my app, I could use multiple cards, right? Like this. But do you notice I have the skeleton of the card, right? I have a skeleton of the card. All I got to change is the title and the text. If I have that, I can sort of create a custom card component, a reusable custom card component. Did I not? Yes, I did, right? How do I change this? How do I change this? Well, to do this, I have to tell each card component, I have to give it some data, right? I'm going to be like, okay, card component, for title, can you take Safari, right? I'm just going to give each one a random title that I can think of. Polar. It's purely random. Football, and let's go with maybe another sport, cricket. Alright, beautiful. Now, nothing will happen. The titles won't automatically change. I'm just giving the data of title to each of the card. So inside my card component, I will need to use this. How do I use this? Well, do you see this sort of parentheses? You just create brackets and just call it exactly what you call it here. Title. Beautiful. Now you can use this title anywhere inside here. So instead of me being static and just setting it to be title here, I will set it to be the value of title, the JavaScript variable of title. Right now you'll see, oh wow, Safari, Polar, we have some unknowns here. Why is that the case? It's because I called it title, not title. That's, see, once I make mistakes, it's an opportunity for you guys to learn as well. So title, you have to call it the exact same name. Okay. Perfect. Now let's say I'll give it a text. Right, I'm just going to call it text. Hello. This text could be world. This text could be how. Oh no, this could be cool. And this could be what's up. Alright. Now, it won't automatically, as I said, render here. What do we have to do? Use it. Text. But there'll be error here. What's the error? Call it to console. Text is not defined at card. So we're using text, but it's not defined. Why is it not defined? Well, inside here, we only define title. But we want to define, we pass in more than just the title. More data than the title, right? So we've passed in the text. So, comma, text. And pass in that text here. The JavaScript variable. Boom. Hello, world, cool, what's up? Simple as that. Right. And we've also got the like, unlike button working as well, using states. See that? It does not re-render, does not reload, right? And that's the beauty of React. So let's quickly go through this. By the way, this concept that I just told you, these are called props. You're passing in data, and that concept of passing in data to components is called props, right? You're passing in the title, you're passing in text, and the component is using that and rendering it. Simple as that. These are props. We've also learned what components are. Components are nothing but just a reusable piece of UI. In this, it's a card, and then the button itself is a component. We've also learned about how states work. So if I go back, back to the thing, the state is this piece of data, right? Piece of data associated with that component, so the text. And whenever that piece of data changes, React is like, okay, I need to re-render this piece of code. I need to re-render this component, right? And how do we change that piece of text, of the value of text? You use set text. Set text, and then you put whatever value you want. Here, we needed the previous value. That's what we had. Therefore, we had to create a function, and inside React automatically inserts previous value. Okay, and from there we learned that whatever the value of this is, that's the value of the text. It could be a number, it could be a boolean, it could be anything, right? It could be an object, could be an could be an object, right? A JSON object, an array of objects, right? Anything. So here, whatever this value is the initial value of this variable. Whenever you want to change it, you use the set text or set whatever, right? It's a function, right? So this is the basics of React. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time creating better React videos. And if you do have any feedback, please write it down in the comments. I will 100% try to incorporate this feedback in the next video. Thank you and peace out.